So with that, the next part of the conversation we're talking about is when is the right time? Because timing's key, right? So one of the, as we mentioned earlier, you've got to be aligned with business strategy, right? If you're not aligned with, and again, it can't just be go to cloud, right? You've got to understand why are we going to cloud and what are the business goals we're trying to accomplish by going to cloud. That's probably one of the key important things. A lot of people go to cloud and they're like, "Oh, well, this isn't what I expected. I expected to save cost." Well, that's probably not a realistic expectation. So let's go establish those business criteria and strategy of what we're trying to get accomplished. Make sure that it's reasonable, and we've educated our executives about what can and can't be done from that perspective. A common transition that I've seen more recently is that honestly, folks are tired of the constant capex refresh hardware infrastructure project cycle. And so by moving to the OpEx model, we can go and be much more fluid. You have the OSs, you have the environment, you're able to run. We have extended, get security updates included in the platform so we can run those OSs even longer if we have to actually do an OS refresh, which then you can, in a lot of cases, more logically tie that to an actual, hey, I have an app update, so I'm going to refresh the OS to the latest version it supports, and now I can extend that life even further. Again, security and compliance, there are things like Gov Cloud specifically for if you're a government agency or whatever else, there's certain capabilities you have to go into the Gov Cloud. You can't just use public cloud, but there are capabilities around those feature sets. Again, this is kind of a double-edged sword. There's things we can do to help facilitate security and compliance in the cloud because most of the cloud providers are natively certified for a lot of the big compliance requirements. But with the caveat, once you go in there and start deploying services, you have to ensure you maintain that level of security and compliance. So that's where the trigger comes into play. One of the other things is, do you have the IT resource and talent, or do you have a partner or service provider you're going to work with to help get you there and then maintain that environment once you're there? One of the things we're going to talk about a little bit more is that cloud is not I move and I'm done, right? Cloud is constantly innovating, changing, evolving. And so we have to understand that we're going to have to constantly be monitoring, operationalizing the environment. And one of the biggest things we have to do on the journey is making sure we're managing the financial side of this. Because again, that can very quickly, if you're not paying attention, run away as well. And we certainly don't want to have that happen. Again, performance and DR, great conversation point, like we talked about earlier. And then again, digital transformation. Maybe you're trying to uplift and transition your entire stack to more modern apps or whatever it might be. This is, again, the time. So what we've seen from the projects we've been involved with, the customers that we've been able to kind of help through this process and journey, hardware refreshes are a prime time to take a look at this, right? But don't wait till your hardware refresh is coming up. You need to start looking at this 12 months out, right? Start evaluating, hey, I've got a hardware refresh I'm going to have to do. My hardware's going to go into life. I'm going to have to do something. What does that look like? What are the apps that I have? What are the capabilities that I have today that I need to have go someplace? What could I potentially start carving off? Maybe I carve off some of it, and maybe I have a smaller footprint I have to refresh this year. And then in 2 or 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, we go and we look at that again. Maybe we carve off even more. So again, it's a journey. It's not hey, I'm going to do it tomorrow. New applications and or upgrades, right? I'm seeing a lot of application vendors are coming out now with new versions, and part of that new version stack is, oh, by the way, we now have a SaaS version. We'll run for you in the cloud. You don't have to manage the infrastructure, anything else. You don't have to go through those cycles. So that's something else to always be looking at and considering. One of the other things to do, don't try to make a transition during your busiest time of year, right? If you've got business cycles that let's identify a time to make sure we're strategically planning for doing outside of peak business criteria. And again, mergers and acquisitions, we see this a lot as well. Hey, I just acquired this. It's on a completely different platform. I need to consolidate it. Where do I go? Right? That's an easy place as well in terms of key timing events that may trigger. Hey, we really should take a step back for a minute and really see what's there from a cloud perspective. So obviously, there's good things, but there's also some risky ones, right? If you've got an annual static budget, this may not be ideal, or you're going to understand how to maintain within those budgets. Because again, in the cloud, things are going to fluctuate. You can put some controls. You can help reduce that. There's different things we do with our customer base to help maintain and adhere to that. But again, those budgets are going to fluctuate some. And at any point in time, you're consuming a cloud service. Those prices can potentially change as well. So keep that in the back of your mind. HIPAA, GDR, ITAR, some of those requirements, those are things that make things a lot more complicated because now you've got to potentially put resources in a specific region or location that may not be where the rest of your environment is going to be, and then it's connect it all up, which may incur additional costs. As we mentioned, networking becomes a very key component because unlike where you're at today, if you're on-prem, you have your internal switch stack and network and or Wi-Fi that your users are connecting to, and all that backplane is happening at the speed of your core networking, right? Or networking you're connected to. Once you take that up and you move to cloud, and again, in most cases, you've already done this to some degree because you're using O365 or a G Suite. You now have a dependency on that internet connectivity to get your data, right? To get your apps and things like that. This is even more when you move your data center because now all of the data center apps and data is out there. So you need to make sure that you've got good circuits with, decent speeds, but they also, in most cases, we recommend redundancy at this point, right? Because that way, if you lose a circuit, you're still up. So those are some things you need to take into consideration that are just indicators that if you're not at that point, that may be an additional piece we have to address before we can start looking at the cloud component. Again, data transfer and lock-in, that's always a concern. So again, most of the cloud scalers have their own proprietary format of VMs that you're going to be running out there. And so unless you're using some other form or some other transform to back up and print the data and move it, it makes it a little bit harder to move that from a cloud provider to another. There are some technology and tools that are available to help us with that process. But again, you have to be aware of that as you go into this. So again, key considerations, application equipment requirements, data locality, and regulatory compliance, and then obviously speed of circuits and redundancy. So now we kind of got all that out of the way. What is the strategy and how do we get there? So we kind of have 10 kind of steps essentially that we're going to walk through here that we've kind of found kind of essentially for the projects that we've done kind of really come hit home as far as what we've seen be successful in trying to move down this model.